Listen closely, chosen ones. You may not have noticed it right away, but you were never really losing. The people around you just didn't know you were the one holding the controller the entire time. They didn't see your quiet strength. They thought you were in the background, just part of the noise, someone to be ignored or reshaped to fit their story. They smiled at you, acted kind, all while secretly planning your downfall. But what they didn't realize was that something far greater had already claimed you. You weren't just walking alone. You were being guided, protected, and prepared. They thought you were just another person drifting through life without direction. But the truth is, you had already been chosen. You had already been touched by a force far more powerful than anything they could imagine. So when they tried to challenge you, mock you, or ignore you, they weren't just going up against you. They were going up against the very power that chose you. That's why it never worked. That's why they're starting to feel confused, maybe even betrayed, because they thought they had the upper hand, but they were never in control. Before you go any further, pause for a second. If this message speaks to you, it's because you were meant to hear it. You didn't just scroll to this by chance. You were pulled here by something bigger. And there are more people like you, quiet fighters, soft-hearted warriors, who need to hear this same reminder. Every time someone connects with this message, it reaches another soul just like you. Someone who's been doubting their strength. Someone who's been walking alone for a long time, wondering if they still matter. So if this feels real to you, keep reading. Don't scroll past. They feel like they've been tricked, not because you fought back with anger, not because you plotted some grand revenge, but because you showed up and quietly shifted everything. You didn't scream. You didn't throw punches. You simply existed in your full light, and that was enough to make their walls crumble. You disappeared when it was wise to, and when you came back, you were 10 steps ahead. They assumed you gave up. But what you were really doing was growing, healing, aligning. You were becoming the version of yourself that was always meant to show up. Being chosen doesn't come with confetti. It doesn't arrive with people cheering or clapping for you. Most of the time, it shows up with silence, confusion, isolation, and people questioning your worth. But it's in those moments that the truth begins to rise. The people who once looked down on you now wonder how you walk so confidently. They ask themselves how someone they once tried to ignore is now leading the way. They can't understand it, but you can, because you've lived it. You were never weak. You were never broken. You were simply misread. They didn't see the fire inside you because they were too focused on the mask you wore to survive. Now, they're scrambling. Not in public, of course. Online, they still smile. Still post like everything is fine. But behind the screen, they're unraveling because your presence reminds them of everything they tried to hide. Everything they tried to kill in you is now blooming, and it scares them. Your growth feels personal to them. Your peace feels like punishment, and your silence speaks louder than their noise. You didn't win because you played their game better. You won because you stopped playing it entirely. You outshined them, not out of spite, but because your glow couldn't be dimmed forever. You were never here to fit into their boxes. You were sent to break them. The universe saw every time they tried to block your light, every time they tried to twist your path, and it still said, that one. When the universe picks you, it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait until everyone's comfortable. It simply moves. It shifts everything around you to make space for your rise. And that's exactly what's happening now. They're upset not because you failed, but because you didn't. Because they assumed they could control the outcome. And now they're stuck watching you become the version of yourself they never imagined was possible. You were the curveball in their script, the quiet storm that came out of nowhere. And now they're speechless. They thought kindness meant weakness. They thought your silence was surrender. But now they see the truth. You never needed to fight back in the way they expected. Your energy did the talking. Your presence made the difference. And that's why they're unsettled every time you enter the room. That shift you feel, that tension, that's not your imagination. That's their shadow reacting to your light. You don't even need to speak. Your energy carries its own language. And the ones who try to take from you, they're still thirsty, still confused, still wondering how you keep rising when they thought they clipped your wings. But you're not just rising, you're flying. And now, you're unstoppable. Never again doubt yourself. Never again shrink because someone else feels small around your light. You've walked through storms they couldn't survive. You've stood in silence while they threw everything at you. And still, you rise because you are never alone. The universe has always been with you, always working, always watching, always preparing you for this moment. They feel played, but not by you, by themselves. They wrote you off too soon, laughed when you were quiet, rolled their eyes when you were still. But what they missed was that each moment of stillness was a setup. You weren't losing. You were positioning. You weren't silent. You were building strength. They missed the signals, and now they're paying for their own pride. You're not just part of the story. You're the shift in the story, the one they didn't account for. They can't understand how someone they counted out is now the one making the biggest moves. But that's what happens when you're chosen. The whole board flips. Your strength was never loud. It was quiet, steady, grounded. While they shouted for attention, you were moving in silence, building a foundation they couldn't shake. They tried to test you, not realizing they were testing something far greater than you. And now, the weight of their actions is circling back. You never needed to fight. Just breathe, keep going, and trust that what's meant for you can't be stolen. They thought they were ahead, but you were never racing them. You were walking your own path, guided by something they couldn't see, something they still don't understand. Now they're reacting to what they can't control. That's the panic you sense. That's the desperation behind the fake smiles. They're not worried about what you did. They're worried about what you're about to become. Because deep down, they know you were never meant to stay in the background. You were always meant to lead. So now, everything they buried is being uncovered. Every insult, every lie, every attempt to dim you, it's all falling apart. Your glow is too strong. Your peace is too loud. And your rise, it's undeniable. You are no longer waiting for their approval. You're no longer asking to be seen. You are seen. You are chosen. And nothing they do can change that. They used to believe they had the power. Now they realize they were never in control. You were never a side character. You were never the extra in someone else's story. You were the main plot the whole time. And now the story is finally catching up to you. Let them scramble. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the confusion they created. Because you're walking in clarity, in truth, in power. You are the quiet storm they didn't see coming. The one who walks through fire and doesn't burn. You've earned your place, and no one can take it from you. So walk tall, speak when you're called to, and stay silent when you choose. Either way, your presence is shaking the room, not because you're trying to, but because you were born to. And when the ones who tried to hold you back start to feel the wave crash over them, don't look back. Don't second guess. Just keep rising. You've already made it through the hard part. Now it's time to claim everything that was always meant for you. Because when you're truly chosen, you don't move like the rest. You don't need permission. You don't wait for validation. You know, and now they know too. You are the shift. You are the storm. And you are just getting started. They didn't see this coming. They thought one setback would be enough to finish you, that a single betrayal would break you beyond repair. But life had other plans for you. You didn't want to reinvent yourself, but you had to. Survival demanded it. And when everything collapsed, you didn't just pick up the pieces. You built something brand new from scratch. A version of you they never expected. A version they can't predict, contain, or control. They misunderstood your quiet. They mistook your silence for weakness. They thought the applause was what made you. They never saw the nights you cried, the nights you sat in silence, putting yourself back together. No cameras, no cheerleaders, just you and your will to rise. You weren't bouncing back. You were rebuilding in secret, stronger, smarter, sharper, alone but never lost. You didn't just return. You evolved. You didn't scream about it. You just showed up different, cold when needed, calm under pressure, not looking for attention, but commanding it without saying a word. They react to pressure. You become it. You move like water, hard to catch, impossible to break. They keep trying to reach the old you, the version they thought they understood. But that version doesn't exist anymore. You've shed that skin. What stands here now is someone brand new, rebuilt, focused, unapologetic. They keep swinging at a shadow, fighting a ghost that no longer haunts you. And that's why they're shaken. They can't hit what they can't see. They're confused because you've outgrown every label they tried to pin on you. Every time they thought they had you figured out, you shifted. Every time they tried to trap you, you transformed. You never stayed still long enough for them to contain you. You weren't interested in fitting in. You were busy rewriting the rules. And while they clung to comfort and old patterns, you chased growth. You stepped into discomfort on purpose. You made pain your teacher and silence your strategy. They tried to define you, box you in, name you like that would give them power. But you didn't fit in their little box. You ripped up their labels and carved out your own identity. And every version of you that came after was better, more aligned, more aware, more unstoppable. They told you failure meant you weren't enough, that being alone meant you were abandoned, that losing meant you were weak. But the truth? Failure gave you clarity. Being alone gave you space to grow. And every loss made you hungrier, wiser, sharper. They forgot that pressure doesn't break the chosen. It activates them. You were never destroyed. You were just loading, planning, watching, learning. They thought you were frozen in fear. In truth, you were building. They had no idea the storm that was coming. Now they realize they prepared for a battle with someone who no longer exists. They brought a strategy for a version of you that has already evolved into something else. They don't know what to do now. Their tactics no longer work. Their old games don't get a reaction, and it terrifies them. You aren't just reinvented, you're unreachable. You glide through chaos like it's air. You've been through enough pain to stop fearing it. You've been broken enough times to know that breaking isn't the end. It's the beginning. They see your strength and call it coldness. They don't understand how calm can be so powerful. But you do. You've learned the most dangerous kind of strength is the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't flinch. The kind that waits for the right moment and then changes everything. You used to look in the mirror and forget who you were. Now, you remember. You're no longer shrinking to fit into spaces you've outgrown. You've retired from begging for understanding. You don't need validation anymore. You've become the proof. You don't wait for doors to open. You build your own entrance. And the places that once shut you out, you walk in now like you own the room. They don't like this version of you, not because it's wrong, but because it's real. It forces them to confront the ways they've stayed stuck. Your growth shines a light on their stagnation. Your movement reminds them they've been standing still. So they criticize, they doubt, they whisper. But deep down, they know they can't keep up. You move too fast. You shift too quickly. You've mastered the art of becoming. They cling to old stories about you, hoping if they repeat them enough, you'll go back. But you're long gone. You've moved forward and never looked back. They don't understand that reinvention isn't something you do. It's who you are. It's how you survive, how you thrive. You outgrow, outlast, and outsmart. And while they raced for attention, you waited. You weren't in a hurry. You knew the power of patience. You learned how to watch without reacting. You collected lessons from every fall, every failure. You trained your instincts. You sharpened your mind. They saw stillness. You were strategizing. They saw delay. You were mastering your timing. Now, the time has come. Your moment is here. And when you move, it's clean, it's sharp, it's final. You don't need to announce it. Your presence says enough. One shift from you, and their whole game falls apart. One quiet step forward, and their plans unravel. Because they were never playing the same game. They played for now. You played for next. They chased applause. You chased growth. They used speed. You used precision. And now, as they watch you rise, they feel like they've been tricked. But the truth is, they just underestimated you. They didn't plan for your strength. They never imagined you could rise from all of that pain. But here you are, stronger, smarter, wiser, colder when you need to be, and always focused. You are no longer trying to prove anything. You've already proven it. You don't need closure. You are the closure. You don't need to tell your side of the story. Your life speaks for itself. And if they're confused now, let them be. If they're scared, let them be. You didn't come this far just to return to what broke you. You came to become untouchable. They feel uneasy now, even when you're silent. Because true power doesn't need to speak. It shifts the air. It changes the mood. It makes people nervous without saying a word. And you carry that now. You walk into rooms and people notice. Not because you tried, but because your presence speaks volumes. They thought you were gone, but you were just getting ready. And now that you're here, they can't keep up. Because you're not the same. You're better. You're beyond what they expected. You've become what they never prepared for. The storm they ignored. The fire they dismissed. The force they laughed at. They played checkers. You were playing chess, 10 steps ahead. They confused loud for strong, fast for smart. But you knew better. You mastered the one thing they never studied, timing. While they scrambled for control, you learned patience. While they panicked, you prepared. And now, the lights are out. The game has changed. And you're holding all the power. So don't dim your light to make them feel comfortable. Don't slow down to make them feel safe. You didn't rebuild yourself just to fit in again. You came back to lead, to stand tall, to take up all the space you were once told you couldn't have. They spent too much time trying to hold you back. Now they're watching you rise with wide eyes, unsure how they missed it. But the truth is, they were never looking. They were too busy doubting, too busy laughing, too busy counting you out. But you were never out. You were just becoming. Now, you're everything they didn't expect, and everything they can control. And that's your power. You were never meant to stay broken. You were built to rise, to transform, to shine in a way that makes people pause, to be the reminder that real strength isn't loud, it's steady, it's focused, it's undeniable. Before you even speak, people already feel something different. It's your presence, quiet but powerful. You don't need to prove yourself. They can sense there's something strong in you. They just don't know when it will show up. And that unknown, that's what makes them nervous. You don't announce your plans. You move with timing. Sharp, precise timing that catches everyone off guard. Most people train for loud battles, for arguments, drama, chaos. But you're built for wait, for stillness, for endurance. While they struggle to sit with their own thoughts, you're at peace in silence. That alone separates you. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't need to rush, someone who listens more than they talk. That quiet strength, it's rare. And that rarity makes you dangerous in the best way. Sometimes the strongest move is no move at all. Sometimes holding back is the real power. You don't always need to act, not until the time is right. When it comes, you don't miss. You move once and it lands. That's what timing gives you. Power without noise. It's why they panic when your moment arrives. You didn't knock. You didn't announce it. You just showed up, calm and controlled, and suddenly everything shifted. That's how flawless timing works. It doesn't scream. It hits. They underestimated you. Thought you were too quiet. Thought your patience meant you weren't ready. But you were watching, studying, waiting. You knew their weak points before they even guessed yours. When you moved, you didn't swing wildly. You cut with focus. They couldn't match that. They never learned the value of waiting. But you did. You knew what was coming, and you prepared in silence. Now, while they scramble and shout, you're still centered. You don't panic because this is what you trained for. You're not where you are because you rushed. You're here because you moved with purpose. Every delay, every quiet moment, every time it looked like you were behind, it was part of the path. You trusted the timing even when it hurt, even when it felt like nothing was working. You held on. That faith, that's your weapon. Not loud, but lethal. When doubt creeps in, push it back. You're not late. You're not off course. You're exactly on time. Everything you've built, every lesson you stored, it's all about to come together. When it hits, it's going to be undeniable. The world will finally feel what you've been holding back. And when it does, don't flinch. Don't apologize. Don't shrink. They had their moment. Now it's yours. They sent storms your way, hoping you'd drown. But they didn't realize you were the anchor. You weren't just surviving the storm. You were the reason the sea didn't take everything down with it. Life tested you through betrayal, silence, rejection, and lost your way. Some days, it almost broke you. But you held on to one thing they couldn't steal, your belief. That steady voice inside that said, keep going. Faith doesn't mean ignoring the pain. It means trusting there's something bigger even when everything looks like it's falling apart. That's what kept you rising. That's what they don't get. They thought you'd be crushed, but you're still standing, still glowing, still growing, because your foundation wasn't built on the temporary. It wasn't applause or popularity or approval. It was something much deeper. And that depth, they can't reach it. There were times when it looked like you lost it all, like there was nothing left. But somehow, something kept you standing. Something invisible, yet unshakable. That force wasn't luck, it was purpose. Something inside knew this wasn't the end. knew the pieces would come together, and that knowing gave you power. While they collapsed under pressure, you stayed firm. While they reacted, you stayed focused. That calm, it shook them. You didn't always have this strength. Life carved it into you. Through long nights, quiet rooms, and deep pain, you built your certainty through fire. Your faith wasn't given. You earned it. You didn't get here by luck. You got here by surviving everything that was meant to break you. That's why you don't shake, because you've already paid the price. You've already faced the worst, and you're still here. Now, they tried to block you, mock you, gossip about you, but none of it matters, because you already know who you are. You've seen the end of the story. You're not guessing anymore. You're walking with clarity. This isn't some dream or fantasy. This is knowing. Knowing that the same force that brought you through everything before didn't bring you this far to leave you now. Your calm makes them nervous. It highlights how shaky their grip really is. They sense that if they went through what you did, they wouldn't have made it. And deep down, they remember they tried to break you and failed. That's what bothers them most. You're still standing, still strong, still rising. You weren't built on what they understood, so they never saw you clearly. While they were focused on appearances, you were focused on becoming unshakable. Every time they counted you out, you kept going. Not by luck, but by choice. You chose faith over fear. You chose to keep showing up even when no one clapped. That choice, that's the mark of someone chosen. Someone meant to lead, meant to change things. They feel fooled because they thought silence meant surrender, that being calm meant being weak. Only now do they realize they weren't fighting one person. They were up against someone backed by something greater, something unbreakable. So hold on to that faith. Don't tone it down to make others comfortable. Don't shrink your power to make others feel safe. Let them wonder how you're still standing. Let them lose sleep over the fact that nothing they threw worked. They brought waves, but you became the ocean floor. Unmoved, unshaken. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to break the mold. Now that you moved, nothing can go back to how it was. You weren't a spark. You were the whole fire. They thought they could box you in, but your energy can't be caged. They tried to define you by their rules, but you never played by their script. Every attempt to silence you only made you grow stronger. You are the shift, the change, the reason everything feels different now. When you enter a room, the energy changes. When you speak, minds open. Even when you're silent, people pay attention. They liked it better when you were unsure, when you stayed small. But the moment you accepted your power, the ground under them started to shake. You didn't come here to fit into a broken system. You came to question it, to change it. Your truth alone is enough to wake people up. Your walk alone shows a different way to be. You weren't sent to repeat the past. You came to rewrite it. By standing tall, by speaking honestly, by living fully, you become the break in the cycle. People sense it. Even if they don't say it out loud, they feel your impact. Your presence doesn't wait for permission. It causes reactions. You don't need to ask for respect. You live in a way that demands it. Your moves aren't just inspiring, they're disruptive. Your mindset doesn't just motivate, it reprograms. You challenge people without even trying. You are living proof that survival isn't the goal. Transformation is. They won't admit it, but the wave you created can't be stopped now. And it started because you stayed patient. You stayed grounded. You trusted the timing. You let your silence speak, and now your presence roars. You didn't have to scream to be heard. You didn't have to beg for attention. You didn't come in loud or demanding. You came in real. And that kind of truth, the quiet, solid kind, moves people. It shakes things. It cracks open locked minds and gets into places where noise never could. You didn't try to fit in. You didn't fake it. You stood in your own energy, fully. And people felt it. They still feel it. Even the ones who pretend they don't. That's why some people try to label you, copy you, or silence you. Not because you were wrong, but because you were right. Too right. Your presence alone shook up their lives. You showed up and made people see what they were avoiding. That's powerful. That's rare. And that kind of presence threatens those who live behind masks. You didn't follow the script. You flipped the whole script and wrote your own. You are the uncomfortable truth sitting at their table full of easy lies. You brought a kind of change they couldn't plan for. You moved the ground under their feet. You were the lightning in their clear sky, the ripple in their still waters. And you did it all without raising your voice. Just by being you. Fully. Authentically. And yes, that kind of power is scary to them. Because you remind them that they settled. You remind them that there's more, that there's depth, that there's raw, electric honesty they've stopped chasing. Still, you've asked yourself sometimes, am I too much? Am I moving too fast? Am I shaking too many things at once? But here's the truth. You're doing exactly what you were born to do. You're not here to keep things nice. You're here to wake them up. You're the turning point in stories. The reason the cycle can't just keep spinning the same way. Your growth, your transformation, it wasn't just for you. It gave others permission. It gave them hope. It gave them fire. They thought you were just another player, just another quiet face in the crowd. But you weren't. You were the shift. You were the new blueprint walking in. They didn't know you came to build something different and tear down what no longer works. You weren't background noise. You were the axis turning the whole situation around. You're not someone they can just forget. Your energy changed the temperature of every room you entered. They tried to handle you, to soften you, to box you in. But you weren't made to be soft and easy. You were made to shake foundations. You were made to challenge, to question, to ignite. You're not here to make people comfortable. You're here to make them see. See the cracks. See the truth. See what they've been running from. And it's not because you're angry or cruel. It's because you're clear. You've done the work. You've been in the dark. You face the pieces of yourself that most people avoid. And instead of running, you sat with them. You learned their language. You didn't hide your shadow. You honored it. You used it. You let your rage become your drive. Your pain became your purpose. Your scars, they became armor. You were never just light. You were shaped in the dark, molded in silence, forged in the fire. And that's why your light is different. It doesn't just glow, it burns, it clears, it transforms. That's why people feel it even when you don't say a word. That's why your silence is louder than most people's speeches. Because your presence carries all the storms you survived and all the battles you won alone. They don't get it. They thought your quiet meant you were done. They thought your pause meant you were lost. But you weren't retreating. You were reloading. You were building. You were preparing for a comeback so sharp it wouldn't need an announcement. It would be felt. The new you didn't just recover. You rebuilt. Better. Stronger. Clearer. While they laughed and talked and posted, you trained in the shadows. Mind, body, soul. You studied your pain. You mapped your patterns. You watched. You waited. Not because you were weak, but because you were mastering the moment. That's what they didn't understand. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes power is patience. Sometimes power is knowing when to wait. And when you return, everything shifted. They thought you were a footnote, but you were writing the whole book. They thought you were out, but you were just building the next chapter. And now, when you speak, when you move, people listen differently. Because now you carry something sacred. You carry experience. You carry truth. You carry fire. They called you dramatic. They called you intense. They said you were too much. But the truth is, they couldn't handle your depth. They couldn't meet you where you were. And instead of rising, they tried to shrink you. But you didn't shrink. You didn't bend. You kept growing. Quietly. Powerfully. You learned to stand alone. To hold your own space. To not need applause. And that's the most dangerous kind of power. The kind that doesn't need validation. That's what scares them the most. That you no longer need their permission. That you know who you are. That you carry your own light. That your past didn't kill you. It crowned you. Now they see what you've become, and they're confused. They thought they buried you, not realizing you were the seed. They thought the fire would destroy you, but you became the fire. They thought your pain would break you, but it built you. Every scar, every fall, every failure. You didn't just survive them, you used them. You turned your wounds into wisdom, your heartbreak into hunger, your shadows into strength. That's what they can't figure out. You don't just get through things, you grow through them. You flip every ending into a beginning, every loss into a lesson, every setback into strategy. You didn't crumble, you created. And now you walk different. You speak different. You move different. Because you're no longer in reaction mode. You're in creation mode. You don't wait for doors. You build them. You don't follow maps. You draw them. You've stopped explaining your fire to people who are afraid of heat. You've stopped asking for a seat. You are the table. You were made for more than survival. You were made to transform. And not everyone will understand that. Some will try to make you feel wrong for growing, for glowing, for changing. Let them. You're not here for their comfort. You're here for your calling. So keep building. Keep rising. Keep turning the rubble into a kingdom. You are not here to play it small. You're here to lead, to spark, to shift. Let them whisper. Let them watch. You don't need to prove a thing. Your presence says enough. Your story is your power. And your time, it's not coming. It's here. If this stirs something inside you, let it move you. Let it remind you who you are. Not just a survivor, a builder, a breaker of patterns, a rewriter of rules, a force that can't be boxed or explained. The shift isn't coming. The shift is you. So walk tall, speak truth, stay bold. There's nothing soft about your fire. And you don't owe anyone your silence, because this isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of the part they'll never forget.